Greetings, everybody, and welcome once more to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into the mists and head once more into Ravenloft? I hope you're ready. I am your host and guide here to take you through the mists to the realm of Ravenloft once more, Countess Naravan Dracovin. If you are ready to dive into the mists, we may learn of the darkness there. Please do. Remember before we go, or before we travel, to do the various things to support the channel. Make sure you are subscribed if you are not. And of course, do the various YouTube algorithm things and leave a comment on what you think of today's Darklord, which we're visiting. We're going to be heading to Avonleigh and visiting Morgoroth The Black. Let us go. Morgoroth and Avonleigh. Oh wait. We've once again arrived to the mists. Please stay close. I can protect you if you go too far. The mists will accompany you. The undead of Avonleigh will consume you, and your soul will be trapped here forever. But for now, let us learn of Morgoroth, someone that is not really mentioned outside of 2nd edition. Kind of, but not really. You find a little bit about him in 3rd edition, the 3.5 rules. But other than that, he's really 2nd edition. Why is that? Well, here's an interesting aspect of his story. He's told in 2 books, but one of those books is an audio CD adventure, A Light in the Belfry. It is a book, an audio CD, that combined to do an adventure that tells you about Morgoroth. Yeah, it is a really good picture of Morgoroth, but it's an audio CD adventure. The other book there, Forge of Darkness, well, it doesn't expressly tell us about Morgoroth, but it links us to Morgoroth. It talks about an item there, the Headman's Axe, which Morgoroth seems to be the creator of. It seems linked to him, but it's not expressly said. You have to kind of like look at the two, and you can be like, ah, I see. Let's start with the basics. Hi, Morgoroth. That's the image that we have from him from A Light in the Belfry. So Morgoroth is a Darklord. He's a wizard. He's also a ghost, trapped in Tergeron Manor, his manor in his realm of Avonleigh. He's known for basically having killed 2 important figures, a Farron Shadowborn. The Shadowborns will have to be discussed on another day. We'll keep that to the side here. Shadowborn's an important name when it comes to Ravenloft lore. And a knight named Lambert. Lambert's the important one because Lambert heads back to the Headsman Axe. When we look into the Headsman Axe, we learn that Lambert's the one that, defeated the wizard that had that, again, and also he was in love with Aurora Shadowborn. He's also responsible for the destruction of the Order of the Circle, a group of basically paladins. And again, he is an evil imprisoned wizard named Morgoroth. There's a Morgoth. There is a Morgoth. But anyway. And we also know the Headman Axe was drawn into the Land of Mists separate from him. Which is weird, because his horrible evil artifact that's found in Ravenloft ended up there separate from him. Why? Beats me. But it did. When we look at our good friend here, let's just talk about his abilities, what he is. He's about 7 foot tall, thin. His bones seem to protrude from his flesh. He seems very handsome, strangely handsome. His eyes are gray steel, stand out sharply compared with his dark hair and his traditional black clothing. And again, I will tell you here, this is describing him as his necromancer form. He's technically a ghost, sort of, now. Kind of. Sort of. We'll really have to get it. His basically spirit is separated from his body, an entire thing, and we'll talk about it when we talk about his history. But yeah, he's currently trapped in his manor, basically hates everybody that shows up, So if you show up, to adventure in his place, he'll try to murder you, which is, an obvious thing when it comes to these kind of things. Yeah. Darklords murdering individuals that show up in their domain. Hello, Aurora Shadowborn. Alright. So, Morgoroth. We don't know as much about his origin. We know when he came to the great kingdom of Avonleigh. But there is this kind of earlier origin that's kind of shrouded in mystery. We know that basically Morgoroth was in some homeworld before he fled to Avonleigh. And it was a group led by Lambert that eventually defeated him and drove him from this land. We know about this from, of course, the Axe. The Axe, Headman Axe, basically talks about the cruelty of a powerful necromancer in its realm that had tyranny, fear, ruled by decades before great heroes, led by Lambert, the noble knight, challenged him in his stronghold, defeated him, drove him away from his kingdom, allowing the realm to be rebuilt. And the Headman Axe is just one of the relics that remained there and ended up in the Black Vault. But Morgoroth, his history doesn't end by being defeated there. No. His history is actually kind of interesting and tragic. It really is. So he came to Avonleigh. And he actually, when arriving in Avonleigh, sought redemption and atonement for the crimes he had in another world. Yeah! He basically was defeated, went to another world, and while there, basically, to a degree, saw the error of his ways. He petitioned Lord Farron Shadowborn for judgment. He's like, hey, I did a lot of horrible stuff on my homeworld. I'm here now. I don't know what to do. Farron bid Morgoroth to swear fealty to him. Morgoroth obliged. He was granted land in return for this loyalty. And that same night, he constructed the manor. Tergeron Manor. A single night. But this was not without some problems. The literal spirits of his past followed him across the dimensions and worlds to haunt him. Basically, his crimes kind of traveled there and began to haunt the forest around the manor, changing it into the Phantasmal Forest. Yeah. But nonetheless, even with the ghosts of his crimes haunting him, as an evil overlord necromancer, now in another world, he served for years as a loyal advisor to Lord Farron. The Paladins of the Circle, the Order of the Circle, basically forgot him a little bit. They were like, we understand that we had some doubts. The spirits, that must be something related to wizardry. But there are two things that Morgoroth couldn't escape. First, love. A tragic love in a lot of ways. He fell in love with Farron's sister, Aurora Shadowborn. But she was supposed to become a high priest of a local faith, which actually had a vow of celibacy. Morgoroth knew this was happening and withdrew and kept his feelings in check, but Lady Aurora also fell in love with him. This is the tragedy of it. She actually did fall in love with him. But she didn't want to admit it either, because she was conflicted between her feelings and her faith. Honestly speaking, if Morgoroth had confessed his love to her at this time, she probably would have abandoned her faith and gone with him. And honestly speaking, the tragedy that would occur in the future would not have happened. The two of them kept their words. And Aurora made her vows. And after she had made her vows, Morgoroth admitted his love. She fled because she couldn't grasp with her own feelings, but basically Morgoroth felt like he was repulsed. It became much more of a tragedy. Still, Morgoroth and his tragedy still remained on a path of redemption. But then something else happened. Lambert. Basically, the evil he committed on his homeworld was so bad. Lambert followed him, the paladin from his homeland, pursued him to Avonleigh. He laid out his transgressions. I'm sure Morgoroth had said some things about what he did, but probably not the depths of his crimes. The other paladins were angered, but Farron advised steady hand. The fact is, Morgoroth had confessed he was a criminal, came before him, and been loyal since then. So the circle was deliberating what to do. But Lambert, basically very unpaladin-like, or maybe a little too paladin-like, wanted justice, wanted revenge maybe, wanted to go to Morgoroth, attacked him on sight. Morgoroth drew on his dark powers, slayed Lambert, because now Lambert was alone without his group of heroes, and raised him as an undead. The dark powers that he had been basically resisting his entire time in Avonleigh came flooding back. Farron followed, not knowing what happened to Lambert, basically hoping to have a flag of peace rather than war, and then found the reanimated corpse of Lambert, slayed it, and then was probably also killed by Morgoroth. Morgoroth was now completely into the thralls of the darkness which had once consumed his soul. Basically darkness that probably traveling dimensions had allowed him to basically take a step back from. You know, his evil and the darkness of his necromantic abilities now were consuming him. So he went to Lady Aurora and her subordinates, and incapacitated and kidnapped her, and then vanished before anybody could help. The circle came together, traveled there, and he killed them all. Or they just disappeared. Basically, he now had slaughtered an entire order of paladins and kidnapped a lady. The Dark Powers saw this. Welcome to Ravenloft! His manor, the Phantasmal Forest, all went to the Land of Mists. Now, there's only a section of Avonleigh, but this land is known as Avonleigh. He stuck Aurora in a special glass coffin, constructed of basically to keep her alive, but in suspended animation. His consumption of the darkness, he didn't know what to do about that, and basically, you know, obsessed with her, you know, still loved her, but also corrupted by his evil. Anyway, now, here's where his entire thing of, there could have been more to what his Darklord-ship was, but he kind of broke himself. And so, his curse and abilities as Darklord aren't really known as well because of what he tried to do. He tried to escape Ravenloft. He created a powerful magical mirror to do so. But in fact, backfired. The blast destroyed the mirror. It separated into 13 special, basically ethereal shards, and basically destroyed his physical form. Dispersed his ethereal essence within the manor. He was driven mad by this, and yeah, he's now like a spirit that's kind of a ghost, that's connected to the shards of this mirror, but also like in part of his manor. Because the fact is, like, if people would collect up the shards of the mirror and reassemble them, he could return to his physical form. But he's kind of crazy and angry, and just this presence within the manor that watches over his love in suspended animation for hundreds upon hundreds of years. And anybody that shows up, aka adventurers from the Light and Belfry, yeah, he wants to murder them. They could have helped him by reassembling the mirror and allowing him to, like, reassemble himself. But he's too crazy to know that. And that's where he is now. It is such a Ravenloft story. This is the essence of Chef's Kit's Darklord Ravenloft story. A tragic backstory. Avonleigh, it's the forest. There's a couple more details to go over with the forest here, some information to go over it. Basically, the fact is that the land now is very different than the land it was before, but also not. Because the fact is, Avonleigh isn't all of Avonleigh. And this is a land that has the omnipresent, you know, existence of this Darklord. Basically, whispers in the wind, unnaturally cold wind. Yeah. It's an interesting realm for a number of regions. It's technically on the island. It's an island of terror. And the people that used to be here were very prideful, big on paladins. Hey, they're all dead. Anybody that would be here. There's no living people in Avonleigh. At all. Yeah. It's a cursed land. The domain, once part of the Great Kingdom, now really is just a forest and Tergoron, the manor house. The woods are thick, haunted by spirits of undying essence of the eternally cursed, which is probably a combination of all the spirits that haunted Morgoroth before he came to the realm, the ones that came from his home realm, the spirits of the dead that are people that might have been there when they were drawn to Ravenloft, and the spirits of anybody that's happened to wander into there. They do keep adding to the spirits of undead, so it becomes more cursed as time goes on. You know, some more spectral undead that would love to sap the life from the living and add them to their own numbers. The place is also shrouded in darkness constantly. A pair of dim moons, Aelin and Zala, are basically the only thing you find in the starless sky. And those are oftentimes obscured by storm clouds that seem to fill the sky all the time. So, out in the night, torches, lanterns, and bonfires are basically futile in the darkness of the light. It is a realm of darkness. Basically nothing produces more light than a campfire would. The bit of light of a campfire is probably the brightest you can get. And even then, it's not much to shroud the impenetrable night. And the place is cold. 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which, I'd have to estimate how much that is in Celsius. I'm not going to get a calculator out right now. I'm using an American book, and unfortunately, I'm an American. Sorry, but, you can put a calculator in. It's fairly cold. It's pretty cold. But it's 50 Fahrenheit in there. Pretty at warmest. So it's eternal night, darkness, and the coldness. If you try to leave the mist, like if you come in there and you want to leave, and Morgoroth decides, no, you can't leave. What can he do about the mists? Well, they get colder. And colder. And colder. Until it gets so cold, even magic cannot resist the coldness. And by the time you're 100 years out, frostbite will threaten anything that lives. Hypothermia. And you eventually just freeze to death. And no perfection magic can even survive longer than that. The farthest anybody could estimate to be survived is 300 yards before any kind of immunities or powerful magics just fade to the cold. That's how horrible it is. So yeah, and yes, if you make your way in there, the horrible spirits will slay you. Beasts, horrors, ghosts will slay you, because there are some beasts and horrors there also. That's really the only living things in the forest, the not intelligent spiritual things, life forms that are kind of left alone. Everything else is just like, ghostly, murdery. That's the wonderfulness of Avonleigh. Also, the manor is infested with horrible things that are probably under the influence of the ghost Morgoroth, the ghost of the manor, who's also the mirror pieces, and yeah. But there you go. Morgoroth the Black. He's so fascinating. Here's the thing. I don't really think his story needs to be updated for 5th edition, or any new edition, or any new game. It is a great story of tragedy. I'd probably go in and change, the monsters you're fighting, his stats, the buildings, and you can maybe use some of the basic maps if you were going to bring out any of the old book here, good old, a light in the belfry. But, and also, you probably won't deal with it much in Forged in Darkness. Hide both cats. But it's kind of one of these things of, he was a villain, tried to redeem himself, ended up in some things that probably put him in a bad spot, and then his past came back. A past that it's kind of hard to say whether he deserved or not. Certainly speaking, Lambert probably had good cause for all the probably crimes and villainy and horrible things Morgoroth did in the home realm. But it's one of those things is, he's definitely an old edition paladin. There wasn't really a path of redemption in those eyes of a lot of them. It's you're smite evil paladin. Very much so. So, nowadays, there's a lot more gray. There's a lot more maybe Lambert was a paladin of vengeance or something like that. Hard to say what path would have been interesting in this taking, but it is kind of like a tragedy that so many things happened and so many things went wrong that could have been avoided. Again, if Morgoroth found love with Aurora, they might have been in a position to basically, you know, prove to Lambert things were different. They might have ran to somewhere new that they could be together and happy. But tragedy after tragedy resulted in a horrible position. Sorry, Morgoroth. That'll be it for today. I do hope you enjoyed diving into another Darklord. Please check out the rest of my things, whether on Twitch or YouTube. If you're on Twitch, say hi. And do make sure to check out all my stuff, whether it's variety gaming, RPGs, other tabletop-related stuff. If you're on YouTube, hi YouTube. Remember the stuff I said at the beginning? Please do that. And please always check out the rest of my stuff, from live plays, Fall of Avonleigh, to tabletop talk shows like Discussing Tabletop, and other stuff over there. Check out my social media, linked below. Discord is the best one. And of course, the next time we'll dive into the mists to learn about a new dark world and realm, or to do something other related to tabletop. I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.